Welcome, everyone. Today, we're diving into what is literally a high-stakes global strategy game. We're talking about big oil, specifically the refining and marketing entities, and how exactly they navigate a rapidly changing, heavily scrutinized legal environment. This isn't just some abstract corporate exercise. This is a masterclass in strategy that directly impacts the price you pay at the pump, the air quality in your neighborhood, and even the stability of your investment portfolios. So buckle up, because we are going to unpack exactly how these massive entities play the board. And really, that's the central question we're exploring today. Just imagine trying to play a complex game where the referee keeps actively rewriting the rules while you're playing. Refining and marketing operations face this constantly shifting landscape of environmental rules. And these rules can either pose a totally existential threat to their business models, or, if they play it right, massively benefit their bottom line. So how do they anticipate these changes? And maybe more importantly, how do they influence them? Let's step right into the regulatory pressure cooker and look at their operating environment. To really understand this, we have to set up the chessboard. What exactly is triggering all this regulation? Well, according to the Sustainability Accounting Standards Board, or SASB framework, refining operations are under a microscope across a few massive environmental pressure points. We're talking about greenhouse gas emissions from their energy-intensive operations, localized air quality pollutants like sulfur dioxide, massive water withdrawals, the handling of hazardous materials, and those shifting mandates toward clean fuels. Let's make this tangible, right? Think about water for a second. It takes an astronomical amount of water to refine oil. If you do that in a region already facing severe droughts, that puts a giant target on your back. Rapid, aggressive government intervention becomes highly likely. So each one of these areas is a massive vulnerability that sets the stage for new legislation. Which brings us to mapping out the risks and opportunities, or basically anticipating the next move. Because of those intense pressure points we just talked about, every single new piece of legislation carries huge financial consequences. It's a real double-edged sword of risks and opportunities. On one side, the SASB standards point out severe risks. Companies face increased compliance costs, the sudden reversal of favorable policies, losing crucial tax deductions, and reputational damage. Imagine waking up and a government subsidy for traditional refining is just gone. That can cost a company billions, literally overnight. But let's look at the other side. It's not all defensive play. These entities can secure major financial incentives for producing renewable fuels, they can improve their community relations, and they can score big by aligning their long-term strategy with where the laws are actually heading. It is a super delicate balancing act. So how do they tip the scales? Let's talk about navigating the legislative process and playing offense. This is where things get really fascinating when it comes to modern corporate transparency. Under the SASB framework, which is now managed by the International Sustainability Standards Board, by the way, companies can't just quietly lobby in the shadows anymore. Nope. Entities are expected to transparently discuss their corporate positions and detail their strategic interactions with policymakers regarding these exact environmental factors. Historically, trying to influence the laws that govern you was kept strictly behind closed doors. But now, these financial disclosure frameworks are pulling back the curtain on how they shape the rules of the game. When a company discloses how they're managing these environmental regulations, it basically breaks down into 4 specific strategies. First, are they changing their core business model to adapt? Second, are they developing new tech, like advanced biofuels or carbon capture? Third, are they tweaking their operational controls to be more compliant? And fourth, and this is the absolute big one, how are they directly participating in and influencing legislative outcomes? They actually have to explain how they interact with regulators to protect their shareholder value. Just to give you a real-world flavor, they have to explicitly outline if they're, say, funding research to advocate for looser emission caps, or maybe even partnering directly with regulators to draft the very biofuel standards they'll soon have to follow. It's a highly coordinated approach to controlling their own destiny. Now, all this lobbying brings us to a massive concept, the social license. Time to defend the king. See, playing offense with lawmakers has its own massive risks. Let's define what we mean by the social license to operate. It is the ongoing acceptance and approval of a company's business practices by its stakeholders, local communities, and the general public. Basically, that means you. This intangible asset relies entirely on public trust. While a company might aggressively lobby for regulations that favor its immediate bottom line, doing so on sensitive environmental issues can trigger a massive public backlash. If they push too hard for laws that harm your community, they lose that trust, and without that social license, they simply cannot survive in the long term. And the SASB guidance doesn't mince words here. It's incredibly explicit. It states that losing this social license by diverging from what the public or investors expect can severely damage shareholder value. If a refinery's long-term strategy is viewed as fundamentally opposed to the environmental expectations of its community, that's not just a PR problem. It is categorized as a major material financial risk. It directly threatens their stock price. So this serves as the ultimate check on corporate lobbying power. Push too hard against the public will, and the whole financial foundation crumbles. So, how does a single company stack up against its peers? Let's check the ranks on industry alignment and divergence. When we look at who is influencing these massive environmental policies, we have to ask a really crucial question. Do these individual companies even agree with their own broader industry organizations? Are they moving in lockstep, or are they going rogue and breaking away from the pack? Transparency frameworks actually require entities to disclose whether their individual policy stances align with or differ from the official stances of their industry trade groups. If they align, they gotta detail why. But the really juicy part? If they choose to diverge, they must clearly explain and justify those reasons to their investors. Now you might wonder, why break from the pack? Well, sometimes it's highly strategic. Imagine a company that's heavily invested in clean tech. They might actually lobby for stricter environmental regulations than their trade group wants. Why? To intentionally box out their slower-moving competitors by raising the barrier to entry. It's wild. It shows investors exactly where a company positions itself on the spectrum of industry resistance versus proactive adaptation. Which brings us to the end game. Checkmate or stalemate. Let's look at the future of refining operations. We've seen the board, the pieces, and the whole shebang when it comes to the strategies these entities employ. We know refining and marketing entities are absolute master strategists at managing risks, lobbying for favorable outcomes, and securing their financial interests. But I want to leave you with this final thought. As global environmental regulations accelerate at an unprecedented pace, are these massive entities going to be able to adapt their business models fast enough to keep that crucial social license to operate? Or will the constantly changing rulebook finally outpace their ability to play the game? It is a truly fascinating space to watch, and understanding these disclosure standards gives you the exact playbook they're using. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and definitely keep questioning the corporate strategies you see playing out in the real world.